Hi, I'm Max Walker&Williams, and today I'm asking, is Hedera Hashgraph centralized? And actually, is any cryptographic project truly decentralized? Before we jump into the video, thank you so much if you follow me on Twitter at @MWalker&Williams. And if you don't, please go and have a look over there because there's loads of stuff going on. There's a link in the description below where you can click and see the profile. We're very close to 10,000 followers. So thank you so much to everyone who follows me. When we hit that magic 10,000 number, one or more of my followers are going to win some amazing prizes. So if you're not following me, now is the time to do so. Okay, let's jump straight into this and learn about centralized versus decentralized crypto. There are three types of people who think Hedera is centralized. The first type is people with an agenda. They understand how Hedera is structured, generally speaking, but slate the project anyway because they have interest in other projects and believe wrongly that it's a zero-sum game. So I've come across this quite a bit. You'll have people who have bought XRP, which is Ripple's coin, and they aren't interested in anything but the success, which in their mind is the rising price of XRP. And anything outside of that agenda, outside of their lane, they are not interested in and they just poo-poo. So they wrongly believe that in order for XRP to succeed, in their mind for the price to go up, then Hedera has to fail. Or for Bitcoin to succeed, Ethereum has to fail. It's a zero-sum game. And I think that's fundamentally incorrect. I believe that the cryptographic space is going to be massive in the future and most industries are going to run on one form or another of crypto project. And there are going to be loads, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of different use cases, and they're going to require slightly different cryptographic solutions. And so I think Ethereum can succeed in its own way and Hedera can succeed fantastically over here too. That's the first thing to say about that sort of this tribalism in crypto at the moment. Also that people are of the opinion that I'm not willing to learn anything new because I have my project and therefore this is the best one in the world and that's it, the book is closed. And things are evolving all the time. And you better believe if something comes out that I believe is better in any way than Hedera Hashgraph, then I'll certainly be telling you guys about it. I try and educate people on Twitter especially, but on all the social medias and with my videos so that you can have an informed understanding of the cryptographic space and make your own decisions. Okay, that's why the red cross is there. I can't really help these people. They're not looking to be helped. They're not interested. There's just Hedera. I've heard one thing about it. It's negative, right? Forget it. Mine's the best. Mine's the best. And so I can't really help those people. The second type of people are people that misunderstand how blockchain looks today. Now you'll see I've put the Bitcoin logo and some people leave comments below saying why you're always beating up on Bitcoin or whatever. I'm not. This is not special to Bitcoin. This applies to many different proof of work and proof of stake projects. It's just the Bitcoin everyone's familiar with. It's the oldest, so it's the one I refer to because it's the one that people understand most fundamentally. Also, everything I'm about to talk about applies to the Bitcoin platform. Only one centralized ledger. So it's really important to understand this because I have come across people who don't understand even this fundamental basic fact. If you think of each cryptographic project, so the blockchain of Bitcoin is a ledger. It's one big book where transactions are recorded. There is only one copy, one version of that, and lots of people have copies of that. There isn't lots of different ledgers that all copy each other. There is one central ledger and everybody has a copy of it. One centralized ledger. So Bitcoin, and it's a bit of a nonsense because it has no impact in the real world, but it is worth noting that Bitcoin only has one blockchain and everybody has a copy of the transactions on that blockchain. So it's centralized by design. It wouldn't work if it wasn't. Imagine if everybody had their own book for recording. There would be nuances, there'd be differences in the books. There has to be one central book that everybody has a version of, everybody has a copy of. So only one centralized ledger for a start. So straight off the bat, it's centralized because there is one centralized ledger. Now, most people understand this, but what they mean when they say decentralized is either how the transactions are inputted on the ledger or the overall control, who controls the book. Either they think, yeah, we understand that Bitcoin only has one book, it's the book of Bitcoin, and it's all the transactions since the Genesis block number 1. However, it's decentralized because the information that's put in the book is inputted by loads, millions, thousands of different people, computers all over the world. No one knows who they are. Many people don't even know who each other are, and they're all putting transactions in, and that is why it's decentralized. And there is either nobody in charge of the book, or that's decentralized too, because through consensus, people vote and then changes are made, improvements are made to the blockchain, both of which, or at least one of which, is decentralized. And that's what people are talking about when they say Bitcoin is the only decentralized, truly decentralized platform. That's what people say. This was actually quite true about Bitcoin in particular until about January 2019. So true, at least on the mining front, until circa January 2019. From January 2019, in 24 months, the price of a Bitcoin went from $2,500 to $40,500 in 24 months. $2,500 to $40,500 in 24 months. And so something important happened during this time frame that will be obvious when I tell you what it is, that meant that Bitcoin became more and more centralized. So we've got the Bitcoin book, which we all agree is centralized. It's one book, there's one book that we all have copies of. Introduce huge potential profits in anything, and two things normally happen. Large financial institutions show up, and crime usually shows up too. And so this has been proven with Bitcoin. The CIA have confiscated mining rigs off the Taliban in Afghanistan when they've sort of taken over a compound, whatever. The Taliban have been mining Bitcoin. So organized crime has been, laundering money through, and so on and so forth. And as the industry matures, and this isn't just with Bitcoin, by the way, it's with nearly every project. As the industry matures, all of that will hopefully fall away. But it's undeniable that when there are huge profits, it gets the attention of corporates, of corporations, financial institutions, financial houses. And we're seeing that more and more with BlackRock and other pension funds. And so this is what Bitcoin used to look like. And I know this from personal experience because the guys at my company, Utopian Lab, those guys were mining Bitcoin years and years and years ago on laptop computers with USB sticks. And now you need supercomputers to do it because the competition is so fierce. And so this is what Bitcoin used to look like. The green boxes obviously represent computers, and that is a block on the blockchain, and information is being entered from people all over the world. Imagine tens of thousands of different computers entering information. It's decentralized. Where the information comes from is decentralized on this one central block. However, when you have $40,500 for one Bitcoin, and you get, as a miner, inputting information onto the blockchain, you get rewarded in Bitcoin, which is now worth a fortune. Big money shows up. And what does big money do? It centralizes everything. So all of these computers now looks more like this. It's an extreme example. Clearly there are more than two miners in the world. But when you look at hashing power, which is not the number of units, but how many transactions they're able to, how many guesses they're able to make when inputting information onto the blockchain. And if you're not sure how blockchain works, click the link in the description below, and I've made loads of videos about how Hashgraph works, how blockchain works. If you're new to the channel, click the link in the description below, get a basic understanding of how the technology works, and then come back. And so when people say Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized project, a cryptographic project there is, this is what they're referring to. But this isn't what it looks like today. So Bitmain, for example, Bitmain is a company in China. They account for 70% of all mining hardware, Bitcoin and Ethereum. So if you buy a mining rig, there's a 7 out of 10 chance that it's come from Bitmain. And Bitmain owns a company called Antpool, and Antpool accounts for 10% of all of the hashing power on Bitcoin. So putting the other 90% aside for 1 second, 10% of all the transactions that are going on this centralized ledger are coming from one company. And this is going to get worse and worse. And the opposite is actually true, because people who are what they call Bitcoin maxis, people who love Bitcoin, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that, they're saying one day Bitcoin is going to hit $1 million. $1 million a coin. And that is why it's a great time to get in. But there's a dark side to that too, because if these guys are willing to invest the millions and millions of US dollars that they have in order to have 10% of the hashing power on Bitcoin, how much more are they going to invest if it's not $40,000 a coin, it's $1 million a coin? Over here, I've put a question mark because the other thing about Bitcoin and most proof of work and proof of stake platforms, cryptographic platforms, is that we don't know who these are. One of these is a guy called Reese, or was when it was possible. Now, you don't know anything about Reese. He could be a good guy, he could be a bad guy. It's kind of irrelevant, I suppose, if he hasn't got too much control, like Bitmain. But you don't know who he is. So are you buying Bitcoins that's helping the price of Bitcoin stable and go up? And is it the Taliban on the other side of that mining? Is it somebody in China? You don't know. So it's becoming, and the reason that's important, by the way, is not because good versus evil and that sort of stuff. The reason that's important that you don't know is because what if this company accounts for 30% of the hashing power, which F2 Pool does? And both F2 Pool and Bitmain are both in China. So what if Bitmain buys F2 Pool? Now they've got 40% of the hashing power, and because we don't know who's doing what, you don't know if they already have. And what if the Chinese government steps in and buys both of them and then more, and then opens their own mines? It's one of the downsides of having this anonymous entry into the ledger, is that we don't know who is entering information into the ledger. Now you might say, well, that's not really important if it's a good guy or a bad guy or whatever. But what if it is directly funding terrorism? What if it's directly funding organized crime, the drug cartels? What if, more importantly for the purposes of this conversation, just from a technological standpoint, what if somebody is buying up all the other miners or building a bigger and bigger mine? If you don't know who's inputting, how do you know that Bitmain hasn't bought F2 Pool? How do you know Ampool hasn't bought F2 Pool and then somebody else and accounts for actually more than 40%, 50%, 80% of the hashing power? It's becoming more and more, the more profitable it becomes, the more centralized it becomes. And of course it does. Because if there's massive money in diamonds or gold or anything else, guess what happens? Big institutions come in, they push the little guys out, and the 80-20 principle applies. So how do we design something that is decentralized enough that no one person is in charge, but is centralized enough that we can ensure moving forward that the power can't be bought up or invested in to take control of a project, like in the case of Bitcoin? And no one can argue with me about that because they don't know who's mining. That's the whole point. This afternoon I could go and buy a rig from Bitmain on eBay, set it up tonight in my home, and you wouldn't know I'm doing it. And so I could buy, for all you know, I have bought Bitmain and I'm the owner of Bitmain. You don't know. But maybe I've got subsidiaries that own other companies, that own other big mining companies. You don't know. Then the third type of person is people who misunderstand how Hedera is structured and why it's the best version of decentralized we have, in my opinion. And so here is the hash graph in the center, and you've got 1, 2, 3. So step one, okay, Max, we've got this ledger, and we're going to record information on it, but we want to make it decentralized and fair so that we know that the people putting the information in are being honest and true. What do we do? Well, I'm going to employ, or I'm going to hire, or I'm going to ask 5 people or 10 people or 30 people that I trust to enter information onto the page, and then I'm going to get the others to check it. Yeah, but if you ask your 5 friends, Bob, who's never met you or your friends, doesn't know if they're trustworthy. Only you know they're trustworthy. And what if that changes? And also, if it's a person, what if they die, pass away, become desperate for money, and so on and so forth? Okay, so I'm not going to use my friends because you don't know my friends. And you're right. How well do I know my friends? So what can I do? Okay, we're going to have companies do it, but massive companies. So having massive companies, despite what the guys with multicolored mohawks think and say, having massive companies is a huge positive. The reason for that is not because they're wonderful hug a tree kind of companies. It's because they take a very capitalistic and monetary purist view on things. So they take a long-term view on what's most profitable. A short-term robbery or theft or scam today, or perpetual passive income forever. Well, most of these companies got to where they are because they take a long-term, 10, 5, 10, 20, 25, 100, 300-year view on things. And say, okay, we've got these massive companies. They're very successful in what they do. So they don't need, they haven't, they aren't a really, really good person who then, has a sick child who needs to run a scam in order to pay for an operation. No. Google are making billions of dollars of profit. So for a scam to take place, the monetary interest in that scam would have to be, how big would it have to be? For Google to run a scam, how big would the payoff have to be to justify it to Google, who are making billions of dollars of profit? It'd have to be massive. Okay, everyone knows them, everyone's heard of them, everyone knows where they are, where they're based, and so on and so forth. So you might not know my friend, but you know Google. IBM, the London School of Economics. Okay, that's great. So how else can we decentralize these people? So we agree there should be people in charge, but they have to be people that we can kind of trust as much as possible, but we don't have to trust them. All we have to trust is that they will look after their self-interest, and their self-interest might not necessarily be the self-interest of somebody else on the board. So what's good for Google might not necessarily be good for IBM. So all these people would have to be in cahoots, all 37 of them, in order for a scam to even be considered. Then it would have to be so profitable to companies like Google that they run the scam. Well, it's clearly a nonsense. The chances of that being a thing are far, far, far infinitely smaller than Bitmain deliberately putting a code in their mining equipment that meant that they could remotely switch off your mining equipment whenever they like, which is a real thing. They got caught doing that. And if you want to learn more about that, by the way, there's a link in the description below where I talk about Bitcoin and I talk about the Bitmain scandal. Okay, so number one, we're going to get all these companies that we trust or that we trust to do right by themselves. And that means by default, they do the right thing by the project, okay? But what if Google and Yahoo, and we're not going to have loads of different companies in the same industry. We're not even going to have loads of companies. We're going to have companies and we're going to have charities. Why? Because a lot of these charities and educational institutions aren't money-led. So even if the scam was a $100 trillion scam and they can live happily on a beach forever, even though Google already can, LSE, the London School of Economics, has no interest in running a scam to earn money. What they do care about is truth, education, and their reputation. Okay, fantastic. So we've got different companies and charities in different sectors. What else can we do? Okay, well, let's make sure that they're all in different countries, in different time zones, different languages, different cultures. Okay, fantastic. So we've decentralized them by industry, we've decentralized them by location, we've decentralized them by time zone, by culture. And so, for example, Avison Young, one of, if not the largest legal firm in the world. If Avison Young were caught running a scam, what would that do to their business? If they are lawyers and solicitors and legal, there have to be fit and proper people in order to have the right qualifications in order to act for people in massive property transactions and everything else that they deal with. So running a scam is just a non-starter to the London School of Economics, to the legal profession from a moral point of view, let alone the fact that they're not really, the LLC are not interested in money and Google are earning so much they don't need to run a scam. Okay, fantastic. So, but the problem is there's 37 of these guys. So how many do we need to decentralize this? Okay, well, let's not just have 5 or 10. Let's have 37 of them. Okay, so we've got 37 of these massive institutions all running the governance and making sure that everything is running correctly. Because by the way, if you've got a ship without a captain, they often run a course, okay? They run off course. If a ship has a captain or 37 different captains, then it's more likely to get to where it's going than if it's just drifting out in the sea. Number two, we're then going to take their power and dilute it even further. How are we going to do that? We'll allow trusted community members to run nodes. So nodes on Hedera are like mines on Bitcoin. So now Max, and if you're on Twitter, you'll know all these people, or hopefully, myself, XRP Owl, Nick, and the Crypto Bull. So we've now got community nodes. These are people that are known to the Hedera ecosystem. They're trusted, they behave in a fit and proper way. And so step 2 of this is we're going to allow community nodes. Now, if there's 37 nodes, Google has 1/37 of their hashing power. You add community nodes and that dilutes down to 1 in 50, 1 in 100, whatever it may be, depending on how many community nodes there are. And people like yourself can attach your HBAR to the community node of your choosing or to the governing council node of your choosing and help them with a vote. But by the way, we're not going to allow, because with Bitcoin, How many machines you own, how many mining machines you own, and how powerful they are determines how much hashing rate, how much information you can potentially put on the ledger. Whereas with the nodes on Hedera Hashgraph, they're capped. So it doesn't matter if Google has a full node because it can't have any more voting power. That's it, it's capped, the node is full. It has as many votes as it can have. And if Google were to buy IBM, then IBM wouldn't be allowed to have the hashing. Google couldn't have 2 nodes running. And by the way, they've even gone even deeper than that. So I've actually checked out running a community node because I would be honored to do so, and I think it'd be fantastic for me and my community. And so it's something I really, really want to do. So I had a look and read up on some of the requirements for running a Hedera Hashgraph node. You can't even, if you have to have a certain computer to do so. That computer, they can't have too many computers manufactured by the same person. So for example, if I bought a computer off IBM and I'm late and too many people already have, then I can't use that computer, I have to use a different brand. So even the type of computer that the node runs on is decentralized as much as possible. Even the internet connection. So whoever the internet provider is, so if for example, Google provided internet connections, and there were already 5 nodes, I'm making the numbers up just as an example, the 5 nodes already running on the Google internet, the Google broadband, then they won't have another node run on that broadband. So we're decentralized by industry, by structure in terms of charity, banking, legal, education, search engine, and so on. Boeing, and the many others that I hope you're familiar with. And so they're decentralized by what they do. They're decentralized by location, but they're even decentralized by the software the hardware that they run their software on, and they're decentralized by even the internet connection that they have. And so we're now running these nodes, number 2. So what else can we do to make this as decentralized as possible while maintaining in my opinion, acceptable level of control? On stage 3, on phase 3, in the final phase, will allow anonymous nodes. So you will be able to run a node and you aren't known to the Hedera community before. So you start and you stress test like Hedera do with everything they do before they launch. They do not build it on the way down. They build it, they stress test it, they make it sure it works, and then they launch it. So we have the Hashgraph running with the council members. Then we have the Hashgraph running with the council members and trusted community nodes. And then we have the Hashgraph running with the council, the community nodes, and unknown nodes. Anyone can start a node as long as they meet the requirements and so on. But even then, they have to meet certain requirements, which means we maintain the integrity of the decentralization. And I can't really think of any other industry where this model would not only be accepted, but cheered, and lauded over. Because would you rather receive medical care and pharmaceuticals from a name you know and hopefully trust? But even if you don't trust, at least if you consume the medicine and it does something wrong, you've got someone to answer for it. You've got someone to go to, a phone number to ring, an email to send, somebody to sue, dare I say. Or would you rather have nameless people in basements making your medicine and then sending it all to a central factory and then you having that delivered to your house and consuming it? I know which I'd prefer. I like to know who's doing what, and I like them to be answerable. And when they have meetings, I want the discussion of the meetings to be open forum, and I want the minutes recorded. If there is something they're discussing that's sensitive, of course, or potentially has sort of a time thing on it, a constraint on it, then I have no problem with them doing that and then releasing the notes and the minutes retrospectively. So they plan to do something that's revolutionary. They keep it under wraps for 6 months or whatever. We know there's information under wraps, but we just can't see what it is. And then on the time they agree, they release that information. I have no issue with that. And you shouldn't either. And if you've ever been the victim of a scam or a robbery in the cryptographic space, who do you turn to? Who do you go to? Recourse. And this is why scammers and hackers are getting away with trillions of dollars in crypto assets, because who are you going to report it to? And how are you going to trace them down and track them? It's a hacker's paradise by design with some of the platforms. With this, it's traceable, it's trackable, and the people in charge are answerable. But there is no one person in charge. These guys can't even sit on the governing council for more than two 2 terms consecutively. So there's 3 years, and then they have to take a break. They can come back after 3 years. So even the governing council isn't constant. It's decentralized and they have to keep turning over. Now, some people say they get all of this and they say, yes, but Swirlds Labs, which is Manson Lehman, the founder's company, always has a seat in perpetuity on the board. And I see that as a positive because you have to have at least one constant. Now, it's important to note their voting power is no more or less than anybody else on the governing council. And to make massive decisions, they have to vote and they have to agree unanimously. So if they want to increase the supply, it has to be a unanimous vote. So Swirlds can't just say, right, we're going to double the supply of HBAR from 50 billion to 100 billion, all in favour, aye, yes, done. Now, if the American government wanted, for example, with Bitcoin, to take over, they don't have to ban it. People are saying, well, it can never be banned and it can never do this because they don't know who's doing what. They don't have to. The total market cap of Bitcoin is less than 5 months military spending in the US government. People misunderestimate the power of the US government. If the US government said, right, we're going into Bitcoin mining, and they put 6 months worth of money that they spent last year on defense in America, they've spent more than the market cap of Bitcoin today. So they just build far superior machines, far more of them, that would just squeeze even these guys out of the hashing race. And so this is more vulnerable, I think, and as the value increases, it'll become more and more centralized. And yes, this is centralized in the sense that there are people in charge, people answerable to. But I think that's a positive. I truly believe that Hedera has got the balance right. So is Hedera Hashgraph centralized? Yes. Is it as decentralized as it possibly can be and should be? Yes. Will the fact that Hedera is structured in this manner mean that it goes on to succeed with the very institutions that are in the governing council, that are looking for a steady ship with a captain? I think absolutely. So for many of the reasons that people today in the crypto space are poo-pooing Hedera are the very reasons it might win out. As always, thanks ever so much for watching. I really hope that helped you understand the difference between centralized and decentralized and what people mean. But please believe me when I say there is no such thing as a truly decentralized cryptographic technology that exists today. I'll see you soon.